All right, everyone. Hello and welcome back to our RBT training. So today we're going to be talking about how we pick and choose curriculum. We talked a little bit before about how some of the children that we work with, especially our autistic friends, how their brain develops differently from a normally functioning child. So, as we discuss program implementation, we pick and choose programs based on what we call evidence-based practices, okay? Or what has demonstrated in the past to really be effective in teaching crucial skills for future development. And so where do we get this information, right? Who exactly gets to pick and choose what is and isn't an evidence-based practice? So there was actually a national standards project conducted in 2009 that kind of started creating some definitions for what is considered an evidence-based practice. And that's where Part B of IDEA, I think that you guys have kind of heard that lingo before, mandated the policy that ensures appropriate special education services based on scientific-based research. So this report was put together by the National Autism Center. You can look online at their website to find out more information. Initially, they did research in 2009 and created some basic criteria. But then since 2009, they've also continued to collect data. And more recently, in 2015, they produced a second set of information that has kind of updated what is considered best practice now. So the National Autism Center kind of provided an updated summary of empirical intervention literature. Again, you can go back onto their website. It's free if you want to download the actual information pamphlet and read it on your own time. You just have to put in some basic information. But it is there if you'd like to see the summary review of their collection of evidence-based practices. But the project was designed to give educators, parents, practitioners, and organizations information and resources they needed to make informed choices about effective interventions. Some of these included the use of exactly what do we use for assessment procedures, right? What is considered best practice? Again, we keep coming back to that. So what they found is that we should all use some sort of basic standardized assessment to help assess and figure out exactly where our children are currently functioning across their range of development. So everything from their ability to make requests, their ability to understand language, their ability to follow group routine structures, say if it's in school, their ability to complete tasks independently, things like washing their hands, toileting, eating, their gross, fine motor abilities, social abilities, their ability to maintain conversation, engage in imaginative play scenarios, all of those things, okay? How do we assess that in a standardized form? So what EBP found and what they recommend as best practice is to use certain assessments that are catered towards really assessing a realm of developmental areas. So you get a general big picture of overall functioning for an individual. Now, the question is, how do you know which one to use? Well, it depends on what your purpose is. There are two main assessments that I use in my practice. And what differentiates the two for me and knowing which one would be appropriate for a child is A, the age of the child, and then B, what are the results going to be used for, and how are they going to be used across time? Is it something where we're hoping to take this assessment and then this assessment can follow them and track their skills and abilities for multiple years to come? If so, then I might want to use something like the ABLES, which I have right here, the Assessment of Basic Language and Learning, okay? Because the ABLES goes much higher and can follow an individual into, say, middle school, okay? Whereas if you were using something like the VB map, which is also an assessment that's deemed an evidence-based practice, the VB map really only goes up to like a kindergarten level. So that's something that you might consider using for someone that's in birth to 3 or who might be making a transition into public education system, because there's also a nice piece in there. It's called the transition assessment. So it kind of sees exactly, what might be in an appropriate placement for them going forward. But if you're looking to use that information as a way to assess their development for years to come, it might not be the most appropriate measure, okay? So that's kind of, you weigh the cost and the benefit. We're going to go through a little bit more about exactly what those two encompass, those two assessments, and how we pick and choose curriculum that you're going to see and you're going to implement based off of those assessments. All right, everyone. So I have my computer here today to show you exactly the process that your BCBA that you're working with or a teacher that you're working with might go through in order to pick out those skills, goals, and objectives that you're going to find within either the family's plan at home or within the IEP school plan that you're following through and implementing, okay? So I'm going to start off with the VB map. The VB map is based on Skinner's recommendations for verbal behavior and his mapping of that. Verbal behavior is such a crucial part of what we teach every day and what we implement in our teaching procedures, because it's really the basics of all initial programming, right? Someone has to understand the directions that are being given to them, and they also have to be able to express and relay information to others so people understand them. So the VB map goes through a variety of areas. It looks at their ability to make requests. This is kind of a little snippet of what it looks like, but as we discussed earlier, the VB map only goes up to the age of 48 months. So it's particularly relevant for children who are within the birth to 3 or might be making that transition over to a preschool or kindergarten program, because it does have a transitions part of the assessment. But otherwise, it's leveled, it's sequenced. There's level 1, 0 to 18 months skills, 18 to 30, and then 30 to 48 month skills. So as you go through and you make the assessment, you're going to have columns that look something similar to this, okay? So you've got level 1, level 2, level 3, and then within each of these areas, we've got columns that designate different areas of development. So you can't see this because it's super tiny, but I'll have a copy of this online so you can peruse through and follow along. There's manding, tacting, listening abilities, their ability to match to sample, their ability to play, social interactions, reading, writing, listener responding, intraverbals, math, okay? And then it keeps going up from there. So the idea is that the more that you have shaded in here, the more progressed they are. Ideally, if you had an individual that was almost completely typical, then you would have all of these shaded in. But if you have one of our kiddos who needs our service, you'll probably see kind of chunks missing in and out of here. So then what we do after we assess this is we say, all right, we have some missing skills, or what we call splinter skills, here in maybe level 1 or 2, and barely any in level 3 filled out. So we need to go back and ensure that we target these specific skills so that they have a really sound foundation. Just like if you were building a house or a pyramid, the rest will crumble unless you have all of these filled in. So we pick out those skills, and then we create programs that you would find in a program book or in some sort of data collection format. We would put those in specifically to teach that skill so that they can further progress in other skills. So that's one way that our VB map is used. The other really effective and beneficial part of the VB map is using something what we call the barrier score form. Okay, so it looks kind of like this. This does not go according to age, but instead, if you have, it has 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 1 is perceived as not really an issue. 4 is perceived as a huge barrier. So what types of things are really inhibiting our child from making progress in his everyday life, right? What things are obstacles for him? So is it something like his ability to make requests, effective man, his ability to identify objects in his surroundings, instructional control? That's a huge one, right? Instructional control is our ability, and we'll learn about this more when we go into DTI, but our child's ability to sit for a duration of time, listen to a speaker, attend to the materials, and follow directions. If they don't have those basic skills, we're not going to be able to teach them anything, right? So by figuring out exactly where their needs are and what barriers they are, we can put in some behavioral programming to help address those needs. All right, so that gives you a quick glimpse at the VB map. If you'd like more information, again, there'll be some documents online that you can peruse through. But now let's switch over to our ABLES. The ABLES stands for the Assessment of Basic Language and Learning, okay? This is a skills tracking system that, again, it can be used for a child with autism or any other developmental need. But the skills go much higher. We're kind of glimpsing through here. So this is a general layout. So again, kind of like our VB map, okay, you're going to have columns where all of the skills build on one another. So the most basic skills will be at the bottom, and then as a learner progresses developmentally, more complex skills will be layered on top. So we would again complete this developmental assessment, and if there were skills missing, you would see some of those cells not shaded in. Depending on their area of need, we would pick out these skills and we would say, oh, yep, we've got to put in this program and this program and this program. So, for example, I'm going to give you, so here's a grid for the ABLES. I'm going to give you a nice close-up here. So we're going to go to receptive language, or how about requests? Requests are easy, right? Or what we would call manding. So say, for example, we do this developmental assessment and they are missing F3. Okay, and that's a pretty crucial area down here because it's one of the basic skill sets that they should have. F3. So then, me as the behavioralist, I would say, okay, I know I need to put in a program that's similar to F3 for my paraprofessional to execute, or BT. So then what I would do is I would go into the big disk of programs. I would go into F3. And it's going to pop up a program for me. Manding by words or signs. The objective: when teacher holds a preferred item out of reach and says, "What do you want?" student will state the name of the item. Okay? So you can see why this is an integral program. If this child doesn't have the ability to request an item when he sees it, most likely you're having other behavioral problems where he's screaming or hitting or kicking or crying in order to gain access to items because he doesn't have a functional means to communicate. So we would put a program like this in place where literally we set up an opportunity for you to work on this throughout the day with your kids. And I'm sure many of you have come into contact with a program that's similar to this. Now, of course, you might modify it depending on the individual. If your individual is nonverbal, then doing a picture exchange or a sign might also be an appropriate form of requesting an item. All right? So I'm going to stop here, and we will continue talking a little bit more about this when we get to our DTI implementation and program book management section. But at least this gives you a general overview of how we use some sort of standardized measure or best practice to assess our children's needs and then target certain skills and programs that we then put into program books that you see and get to use and implement with your children. All right? We'll see you soon.